Well, welcome to a new episode of Trending Topics with BB, and thank you for joining me. Before we get into it, I want to let people who will watch this or hear this later, you can put questions and comments in the chat, and we'll try to field them as they come in, as we're speaking about different topics, and that way you guys can be interactive with us. And then this should be available for replay later on YouTube and Facebook, as well as the podcast feed. So watch out to all of you out there. So welcome for joining me. And before we get into it, I kind of want to talk about my first time seeing you DJ was this year on the Groove Cruise, and how the Groove Cruise is like, once you groove cruise, you can't not groove cruise kind of a thing. So before we get into your background, talk about your experiences on the Groove Cruise so we can.
Yeah, well, the Groove Cruise has been really amazing to me. The Groove Cruise and the Groove Cruise fam were definitely some of the first to kind of be on board with my music. I actually won a DJ contest. Man, it's been some time now. It's getting probably close to 10 years or something like that. Where it was the first full ship charter, and it was a DJ mix competition. And my girlfriend said, "Hey, you gotta check this out. Enter this contest." So I entered the contest, and I ended up winning the competition. And it was for a spot to DJ on the Groove Cruise. I had never been on a cruise before, let alone a Groove Cruise. So it was really eye-opening, crazy experience. And what I found was that the Groove Cruise was really a very unique experience, in that I've been to a lot of music festivals, done some bigger events and stuff like that. But the intimacy on the Groove Cruise is kind of unlike anything else, because you're all there on the boat. It's a smaller group of people, depending on which Groove Cruise you've been on, somewhere between probably 2,000 and 2,500 people. So it's very intimate, and you spend a lot of time with the people. You're eating right next to the other artists and the fans, and you're passing them in the hallways back to your cabin. And so it becomes this very sort of like cohesive experience that I think is very unique, and I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorite things to do every year. Just reunite, and the people that go are just so much fun. And it's curated to be a fun event by the people who put it on at Wet Travel, with all the themes and the artist interactions and all that stuff. So I mean, I think it's amazing, and I think anyone who has never been on one, and especially if you enjoy this type of music, should definitely check it out. And I've had friends that have come on Groove Cruise who aren't even huge house music fans. They just like fun, and they have a blast. So it's definitely one to check out if you haven't yet. Hold on one second. I seem to have lost audio. Yeah, I lost your audio, actually. Yikes.
All right. So
Hold on. There it came back.
go.
Yeah, go ahead. Say again.
All right. So what I was saying is, I had tried to get on the Groove Cruise for 5 years, and then basically, like, I finally got on this year, and like I felt the same vibes. Like, just it's different, because I've been to EDC, and I've been to other festivals, but it's a totally different vibe than like those festivals are. Groove Cruise is just such a cohesive group of people that like welcome you with arms throughout the ship, and you run into people in the elevator or in the buffet, or it's just so cool.
And it's one of those things, I feel like, when you try to explain it to someone who hasn't been on a Groove Cruise, you can use all those words that I used and whatever, and you kind of get a picture of it. But unless you've actually been on a Groove Cruise and experience, there's no real way to describe it, because those things that you're describing right there, the welcoming of the people, the vibe, all that kind of stuff, it's really a tangible thing that you can feel in the air when you're on the Groove Cruise. And it's kind of hard to put into words to explain to someone who's never been on one, exactly what that is.
Right. And so Yeah, so yeah, I spoke to Jason about the head of What Trouble about just why it's such a great event because everybody just brings positivity on the ship, so it's cool.
Yeah, it's the Groove Cruise fam special, very sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So I kind of want to talk about your background. So I know you worked in A&R and all the good stuff in the industry. Can you talk a bit about how you got started in music and what led you to DJing?
Yeah. So I've loved. I mean, ever since I was not even old enough to really understand even what music was, I've loved music. I mean, I've always loved music. I've always loved listening to music. And then when I was in high school, I was in a band. I played guitar. I was in a rock band, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed, collaborating with the other musicians in the band and writing music. I enjoyed playing. I enjoyed playing in front of people. And this was when I was in high school. And the time came to graduate high school and decide what you want to do. And some of the people in my band, they wanted to keep the band going. I wanted to go to college. Um, I thought to myself, I said, I really like this being in the music thing, but that whole like being an artist thing, it's kind of sketchy, it's no artists don't make any money, whatever. So I said, well, if I work in the music industry, then I will be around music, which I like, and I'll also, have the security of having health insurance and a regular paycheck and like all those other things. So how do I do that? This is me in high school thinking to myself, how do I do that? So I started doing some research, and this was a while ago. So there are a number of music business programs throughout the country at the collegiate level now, but at the time that I was looking at it, it was kind of a new thing. There weren't really a lot of them, and they were varying. There were some universities in the Midwest that had programs. They were more geared toward the product industry, working for Yamaha or Fender or something like that. And the program in Miami was more geared at working for record labels and more specific to that. So I did some campus visits. I considered, going to school in Seattle and Miami. I mean, obviously opposite places of the country. I visited the campus in Miami. I liked it. I decided that I was going to, go to school there. They offered me a scholarship, which was nice. And I did the music business program there. So then when I moved to Miami, I got involved. I really learned about electronic music. I didn't know anything about electronic music I mean, I knew freestyle music from like way
The
back,
80s?
because that
Yeah.
that that had crossover radio, and I heard that music when I was younger and growing up, even in Phoenix, Arizona. But as far as like, clubs and the lights and the DJing and the strobes and the, all that stuff, not a clue about it until I came to Miami. And when I came to Miami, it was like right around that time where there was, huge European influx to Miami Beach, clubs like Liquid and whatever. I mean, that was an early club that I went to when I was in Miami, very young. And I was just kind of blown away by the music, and everything. So uh, I ended up graduating. I took a job working for a record label in Miami, and one my very first paychecks that I made, I went out and I bought two 1200s and VMC 07 Pro like battle mixer. And I spent a lot of my money when I was first working on going in the vinyl shops here in Miami. Groove Man Music was one, Uncle Sam's was another. And I used to spend a lot of money on records just to buy them. So I wasn't really playing out or doing anything professionally. It was just for fun, just for me. And I just play records and play records and play records. And then eventually moved to New York City, still working for the same record label. Um, and then I kind of fell out of DJing. I actually was working with a lot more like indie rock music and that kind of stuff. And then when I was living in New York, some of the bands and artists that I was working with were people like LCD Sound System and Digitalism, and a lot of that sort of like stuff that was kind of like indie rock, but it was crossing back over into the electronic world. And I really liked it. And I started getting back into DJing, and it wasn't long after that that I ended up moving back down to Miami. And at that point, my sort of like career in the music industry, I was doing manufacturing and production for like CDs and DVDs. So a lot of like conceptual design of like box sets and like stuff like that, which was cool, and it was project based, and I really enjoyed it. But nobody buys box sets or CDs or anything anymore. So that was kind of coming to an end. And at the same time, basically, I sort of won a Groove Cruise contest. I won a contest to play at EDC in Orlando with Insomniac. I started producing and having some success there. And I just sort of said, to the me way back in high school that thought it was kind of a risky move to be a musician, that, hey, maybe why not give this a try? And that was a while ago now, and it's been going that way since then. So that's sort of like the long version of how I got to where I'm at now.
Well, I want to touch on something too, is that we're both from Arizona.
Correct. I grew up in Phoenix. I know you're a University of Arizona graduate.
Yeah, I grew up in Prescott.
Okay.
I've lived in Phoenix most of my, like, for the last, yeah. So, and then I went to U of A. And
Okay.
so
most of my friends from Phoenix went to U of A. ASU was too close.
Yeah. Yeah. And I liked U of A better, but that's the whole thing. So when you growing up, you said you weren't kind of as aware of electronic music. I know there was like a scene back in the day in Phoenix that a lot of like Marcus Schultz got his start there, and a lot of other DJs, and then they all left. Yeah. Were you aware of that type of music? I
wasn't really aware of it. I knew some people in Phoenix that were into kind of like a more jungle rave scene. This was before I left from Miami to come to college. I was roughly familiar with the music, but didn't really know that much about it at all. I mean, at the time I was in a rock band. So everything that I was consuming music wise, writing, all that kind of stuff was all rock-based music. So actually, towards the end of the band, one of the band members was really starting to get into Nine Inch Nails and wanted to incorporate a synthesizer into the act. And we were all kind of like, whoa, that's not what we're doing here. In retrospect, I think that was probably a bit reactionary, and that came from a place inside me that probably wasn't the right place, being reactionary to incorporating that in the music. But that's just kind of how things were at the time. And I mean, even for some rock musicians now, the way that they feel about dance music is a similar thing, that it's because it's not played on an instrument, which we can argue the semantics of that one way or another, that it somehow or another is more lifeless, or it doesn't have an authenticity to it that music played on real instruments has. And I think I had a little bit, which I do not have any longer after doing this for a while. I mean, all of the pitfalls and the traps and the things that all people talk about when it comes to, music being formulaic or lazy or whatever, that's in every genre. It's in every instrument. It's in every discipline, So the finger pointing thing is something that I just really don't understand anymore. But I think at that time I was a little less educated on all that than I am now.
Right. And I think, well, it's interesting because I kind of feel the same way. Like I played saxophone for many years.
Okay.
And like, I still love electronic music. So I don't think there should be like instrument musician versus somebody that knows sense and ways. I don't know how to do. I don't think there should be any pointing the fingers. It's music is music. It's all subjective. So I think it's funny how people are like, electronic music is not music, and I'm like, how? Like,
I mean, I remember that kind of right around the time I moved to Miami, a very similar thing with the way that people felt about hip hop music as well, being based on samples and that the words were spoken rather than sung. People wanted to say, oh, that's not music. But I mean, the truth is music is melody and rhythm and groove, and that can exist in all kinds of different ways. I mean, and you don't have to know anything about music to be able to create it. I mean, anybody who's watching this right now or doesn't even know anything about music knows how to sing along to their favorite song, and that's creating music. So it's not something that needs to be studied in order to be able to be made or anything like that. So, it's obviously something that's very natural to us as humans. Why that is, I'll leave to the anthropologists to figure out. But it's innate in all of us, and we all, I feel like, have a connection to music one way or another, even if we don't consider ourselves musicians. So, it's universal.
Right. And my next question is like, from your studies and moving to Miami and working in the industry, what evolution did you see in terms of, because a lot of people are like, really want the fame and the fortune of music, but if you go into the music industry with that kind of attitude, it kind of crashes and burns pretty quickly. So I guess my question is, what have you seen in your journey that has changed the way people are? I know COVID's a whole different thing right now, but
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it as I see a lot of dualities in the music industry, right? I mean, and it's very specific, and I feel like it's either one way or another way. Like, people who are out there creating music, I mean, especially in the DJ and electronic music world realm, they're they're motivated by one of two things, right? They're either motivated by the fact that they really love the music, they love making the music, they love DJing, they love the parties, they just love it. They love the culture, and that's why they do it. And other people do it because they want to be the center of attention. And it is a good way to be the center of attention if that's what you want to be, depending on what type of parties you're playing and how you conduct yourself. And it's, for me, at least now, I mean, within 2 seconds of talking to you, I can figure out what your motivation is and why you're in this. And generally, what I've found is the people who are really into it and really love making music and love the process and love all that stuff, they recognize each other, and there's a bond there that's sort of what instantly formed with someone when you have that sort of connection. And those people stay in touch with each other, and they work together, and they know each other and whatever. And then you have the other people, and you know who those are too. Now, sometimes to the casual person who's just following along on Instagram or Facebook might not be able to differentiate between the two, but I would say that, trust me, on the inside of the industry, people know whose motivations are what. And then that follows in terms of what your strategy is, in terms of how you're going to present your brand and whatever. I mean, if all you're in it for is attention, then there's a number of great ways to go about doing that have absolutely nothing to do with music. So, that's a path that you can take, and it is proven to be successful for some people. I do feel for like the people who really love the culture and love the music, that would never even be an option or something that you would consider, because it would be so hollow and empty, right? I mean, for me, I love the process of making music. So if I'm in here by myself and I'm writing a song, I'm enjoying that. That gives me great joy and pleasure to do that. So whether or not there was a performance at EDC or on Groove Cruise, or whether or not this blog was going to be running some premiere of my track or whatever, I'm not thinking about any of that when I'm doing that, right? It's just, this is what I would be doing if I had a day job and I came home and instead of watching TV, this is what I would do, right? So, and I think there's a lot of people out there in music who are doing that and making a living doing it. So it just comes down to your motivations, really, and how you choose to pursue them.
right, like the passion for it and the authenticity behind the passion. I think the big reason why like I reach out to you and a lot of people is because I love music and I love people that love music. And so it's interesting when you see people that are just in it because they're like, oh, I want to be on stage.
I mean, so to someone who's passionate, usually I find that it's pretty obvious, and you can do whatever you want with that information, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. So what do you, in terms of that, like we've seen some interesting things happen in the past with people around somebody talented within the industry being pushed to do something that is pretty bad. Like in terms of being surrounded by people within the industry to push somebody. If somebody doesn't necessarily want to be a DJ, but they want to produce,
It's a tough racket right now.
Yeah. Yeah. What is that kind of, what have you felt in terms of that?
Well, what I feel in terms of that, number one, is that the music industry has been in a state of flux for 20 plus years now, since the advent of digital, basically. And when digital moved towards, it was still physical digital. It was an MP3 or something you had to actually physically have on your hard drive. And now it's streaming, which was another change. It's just been in flux the whole time. And so the business model and the revenue streams have just been changing quicker than you can even keep up. Right. So the problem is the revenue streams right now are geared very heavily towards performance. So if you happen to be a very great producer that either doesn't want to perform or can't perform or whatever, you're in a really hard spot right now, because there aren't really revenue streams set up for you to be able to make a comfortable living doing that, unless you have massive tracks that you're releasing on a regular basis. And I think that with all the changes in the past 20 years, as a society, we need to sort of look at the model that we have for supporting creators, especially musicians, because that medium is the easiest to that, where the physicalness of it just disappeared, right? I mean, music and then movies was next, and photographs. I mean, I can't imagine how many photographers out there that have photographs all over the internet that are just being used without their permission or not getting compensated for. So I think there needs to be some sort of overhaul in the music industry, just about the way the compensation structure is based. And I think that that's something that's probably going to need to be taken up by governments and performing rights agencies to strike some sort of a balance on everything. There seem to be a lot of people making money on music, and unfortunately the artists seem to be one of the last people in line to get paid. So I'd like to see that changed, going forward. I'd like to see it such that if you were a creator and you created something of value, that you could make a living doing that. If there were enough people out there paying attention, you shouldn't have to have 5 million streams on Spotify to be able to pay your rent. That's not realistic when other people are making enough money to pay rent off of your 5 million streams,
Right. So in terms of that, we during COVID now, and how we've met is this whole Twitch world, and how great it's been to just hang out with people on Twitch. But I'm worried that, because of the structure you just mentioned, that things might change because of copyright infringement and all of that crazy stuff. So what I don't understand about that is that it's still getting the music out there and it's still being presented by an artist. I don't understand why that can be, specifically with, touring not happening right now, why that is being attacked. Or,
well, let's be very specific here. It's only being attacked basically by the major labels. UMG specifically is the most aggressive about pursuing these DMCA violations. So they have their reasons. I mean, people have been talking for 20 years that the major label business model has been outdated. I mean, the idea behind having a record label in the first place goes back to, it predates the idea of digital music, because in order to make a record in the 80s, it was a very costly endeavor. I mean, it cost a lot of money to book a studio and rent equipment and manufacture a CD and get distributors to push it out in the stores and put the advertising up so that people could buy a record. And then that money, and then the store would take their cut, and then the distributor would take their cut, and then it would get back to the label, and then they take their cut, and the money would go to their artist, and the manager would take their cut, and the lawyer would take their cut, and it would keep going back. And then, but it was a necessary system, because it costs literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce a record and get it in the store and get it to be sold, right? So you needed a label as a bank. The label needed to front that money for you that you didn't have and get you in the studio and make that thing happen, because you could do that on your own. Now, with the advent of technology, you can make a record in Ableton. You can promote it online with an online distributor. You don't need a record label to do any of that. But their business model is still based on the old method. So they're grasping at straws, trying to pick up whatever pennies they can on their outdated business model, which is no longer as efficient as it used to be. And they're going about it by just making sure that the only place that you can consume their music is through channels that they're able to monetize, which if you get a DMC violation, that means that you're using content from someone that they're not able to monetize and they want you to take it down, which is fair. I mean, it's copyright. They own it. But to be real, the big talk about what's going on with everything is really just spearheaded by the big guys. I mean, you can see labels like Anjuna Beats are putting out swath of their catalog that's available for Twitch streams. Most independent labels, including mine, are not issuing DMCA takedowns on anything. You have the ability with most platforms, even YouTube or whatever, to say, you know, if someone puts up a video, a live performance of whatever, and it has my song in it, and it's on their YouTube channel, they're able to monetize that. They're able to make ads on that. And that's not exactly right because they are using my music. But I don't want them to take that down either because it's also good promotion. So most platforms, YouTube's one good, where you could either issue a takedown and have that issue, have that audio muted or whatever, or you could just have a system where they run ads on the video and then you collect some of the revenue on those ads on the video. So there's different ways to approach it. I'm a big believer in the promotional aspect of the internet. Like I said, with my label, we're not aggressively pursuing any takedowns or anything. But it is something you need to be aware of. I mean, if you're using major label music, you're going to have problems because that's just the way that they've decided to approach this situation. So they're not in the wrong either. So, you know, if you're using their music without permission and you're making money on it, even if you're not making money on it, it's still not legal. So this is why we need sweeping reform in terms of the laws and the everything. I mean, basically the laws haven't been able to keep up with the technology. So, and that's sort of the situation that we're in right now. And DMCA was sort of a response to that, which basically said, hey, we're not going to be able to stop people from putting something up on the internet. But what we're saying is if you are a content hoster and a rights holder reaches out to you and says, you can't have this on the channel, you have to take it down. And if you don't, then you're in violation. So it gives you that little bit of a, so people go crazy about these takedown notices, but in essence, the takedown notices aren't really that big of a deal because they're basically just saying, take it down, nobody gets hurt, right? That's they're going to Twitch and they're saying, mute this audio, otherwise we're gonna have problems. So you just mute the audio. Okay, fine. I mean, to me, not that big of a deal. I also don't use a lot of major label music, and so I mean, it is what it is, you know. They're well within their rights to do that. So,
well, that's kind of how I saw it. But a lot of people, I've seen some people like freaking out one way or the other. So I just kind of wanted a little bit more clarity for those that maybe be watching or thinking of streaming.
I'll be honest with you. I worry a lot about what people know about copyright law. Well, what people think they know about copyright law. I see flat out misinformation on the internet all the time about copyright law. The main one that you'll see all the time is I'm not making money on it, so it's okay. And that is absolutely wrong. It doesn't matter if you're making money on it or not. I mean, if you steal somebody's something, you've stolen it. It doesn't, whether you go out and are able to sell that and make money on it or not has no bearing on the fact or not whether you stole it. So just general ideas about, oh, if I sample this, it's okay, or how there's two different copyrights. There's a copyright for the sound recording and there's a copyright for the publishing, and they're different. And you need to, if you're going to sample something, you need the rights for both. And people just don't really understand it. And increasingly, I'm seeing a lot of, especially younger people, just not care, which is concerning to me because you never want to get in a situation where people are devaluing the art. Right, where because there's long-term repercussions for that down the line. You might be 25 years old right now and think that it's awesome that you're able to put all these DJ mixes on Twitch or whatever, but what happens if that later on down the line leads to there being no value for performed music whatsoever? You don't get compensated for that anymore. It's just considered to be ubiquitous and part of society or whatever. That's going to lead to problems to you later on down the road once you're producing and you have content out there that you're trying to monetize. So it's a tricky line to walk there, you know, the promotional versus being able to monetize things aspect. So,
Right. And you mentioned something about your label, and like obviously I've been in the streams. Like, it's not gonna affect those like yourself that play a lot of your own music, or people within the industry that maybe considered underground
Mhm.
and not necessarily as mainstream than maybe something well known by like Michael Jackson or Prince or something like that, right?
Mhm.
So, but I worry about those like open format DJs that I have seen on Twitch.
It's tough. Open format's gonna be tough because basically all that, and I was talking about the duality before. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, with underground dance music, the idea is you're literally trying to play stuff that no one's ever heard before, or that you're. I mean, that's the object of the game, right? In some aspects of the dance music world, and especially in open format, the object of the game is to play things that people know and they respond to, and they have a reaction because they know it. That's the game there. And most music, if it's music that people know and is widely popular, most likely it either is on one of the major labels or has been licensed in by one of the major labels, which puts it under their umbrella of content to protect. And it's a difficult position, definitely, for open format DJs, for sure, on Twitch.
I
I mean,
mean,
I every one of my streams is muted. I mean, not in stream, but every one of my VODs has a mute on it, and I play underground music. I mean, maybe I play a bootleg or an edit that I've made that's sort of like a different version of that, and sometimes content gets misflagged. But I have there's 0 VOD streams I have that haven't been muted for something. So you know, it's out there. The takedown, they're out there.
but I think the beauty is being there live. But um
I agree. I mean, and if I look at the stats on what's going on live versus what people are watching VOD, it's all of the engagement and all of everything is live on Twitch. I mean, it's a live platform. It's what's awesome about it. So
agreed. I mean, and you're one of the few that does like long sets on Twitch. Your Sunday 12-hour stream is like, I'm always like, I can go do something, come back, go do something, and know you're gonna be there.
yeah,
It's and some other DJs, I mean, they might be doing a long one here or there if they reach some sort of sub goal or donation goal, but you're one of the ones that consistently just does it
well,
Sundays.
it's funny. When we started the stream, we started it and we started with the idea that it was going to be a 3-hour stream and it was going to run from noon to 3 on Sundays. And that was the idea. And we started the first stream and we were having so much fun that we couldn't stop. So we just kind of kept going and we just kind of kept going. And then I mean, there were all these people in the chat and they're watching and they're having fun. And we're like, well, how do you just like press a button to end all this and just like poof, and then it like disappears? Like, why would we do that? I don't know. Let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. And so we did. And it's turned into a really crazy, cool, fun thing on Sundays. And for me as a DJ, it's been really awesome because it's given me time to really dig through my collection, down to the bottom, and really sift through everything, reorganize things, get rid of some of the stuff that maybe isn't really working anymore, and then add so much more new music to the collection because I'm playing for so long every week that as a DJ and a selector, as someone who loves curating music and making playlists and all that kind of stuff, it's been awesome. And obviously playing for that long will hone your DJ skills as well. So it's been honestly awesome for me. And the Twitch community is something that I did not see coming. I mean, my second stream straight off the gate, I didn't even really know what a raid was. And I was raided by Gabriel in Dresden, which is one of the bigger channels on Twitch. And
Club quarantine.
yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it was my second stream, and I probably didn't even handle it all that well. I don't even think I had a microphone or anything, so I didn't even really know how to thank people, or I didn't even really know. I didn't know anything about it. It was overwhelming and a little bit confusing, but at the same time, I knew when I woke up the next morning and I looked back on what had happened, like, I made a lot of money on that stream. I got all these new people that were following me from these stream. There were hundreds of people watching me. Like, I was like, wow, the power of Twitch and the Twitch community is like super real here. Like, I mean, at that point I was like all in and like, let's just keep this going. So been very fortunate enough to develop a really, really nice community around my channel, of people who are fun and, respectful of each other. Um, which is awesome. And I'm thankful to all of them and everything, because this has really been a lifesaver for me during this period for sure, is the Twitch streams. Um, from a social point of view, from a financial point of view, from a, just a mental stability kind of
Right.
thing. It's been important for me, certainly over these past, 6, 7, 8 months that were
Yeah.
going on. So,
Right. And I mean, you've also done Cabin Fever for the Groove Cruise channel, right?
correct. Cabin
So,
Fever, couple festivals for them. Yeah.
so it's like crossing over between GC fam and then people that are new.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I have like my parents ask me all the time, like, because they watch the show, and oh, who are these people? Are they like Groove Cruise people, or like, where do you know these people from? Are they from Miami or whatever? And the truth is I say I met a lot of them on Twitch. I mean, there's Groove Cruise fam in there. There's people from Miami in there. There is, but I mean, a good portion of these people, I didn't know them before I started streaming in April or May or whenever it was, and now they're like people that I would honestly, they're like friends. I mean, I see them every week. I have a Discord, we chat. It's it's pretty cool, I gotta say.
I
I'm
agree.
I'm very impressed with Twitch as a platform.
I did too, and I was apprehensive at the beginning of quarantine or whatever you want to call this, because my old thinking of chat rooms was like, oh, there's gonna be people. But the cool thing is the moderators. I mean, you have Lauren, who's the best moderator ever. So
She's
it's like,
good.
yeah. So it's been fun because everybody can just chat about music, chat about whatever. It's just a way to escape on
Yeah,
Sundays and stuff. So
the
now you
one
have
thing.
Wednesdays, which is
Yeah,
great.
I'm
So
doing Wednesdays too. This one's actually 3 hours on Wednesdays, just 3 hours. So we'll do that one on Wednesdays. But the thing I've noticed about Twitch is the chat is really actually key in Twitch. Really, I mean, and what it does, or what I think I put my finger on, what I like about what it does, is it basically creates the underground club environment in a digital environment. Because when
yeah.
you go to an underground dance show, it's not like going to like a rock show where you're like focused on the band for this song and then they're done and you clap and you look at your friend, you go, oh wow, that was a really good track. Oh, oh, what are they going to play next? Whatever. And then they go to the song and then everyone's focused on like what's going on. And then the song, it's not like that. It's just like a big, long, continuous sprawl of music and everyone's having a good time. And sometimes you're focused on the music and sometimes you're dancing and sometimes you're having a conversation with your friend about what happened on Wednesday or the last time you saw that DJ or the crazy thing that happened to that club 2 weeks ago, or it could be anything, right, that you'd be talking about. And that's what you're getting in Twitch, is you're getting what's going on with the DJ, you're getting the music, and then you're also getting the social aspect of it in the chat. And it all kind of like comes together where it's this sort of like digital representation of what goes on in an underground club. And that, I mean, I think is pretty awesome.
Right. So in the future, when some sort of normalcy happens,
Yeah.
um, and people start going touring, do you think people will still stick to Twitch in between gigs and everything?
I mean, I would hope so. I mean, I think it's definitely opened a lot of people's minds to the platform for sure. I know that personally, I'm planning on incorporating streaming going forward. So part of what we did over the quarantine is we used some of the money that we made from the streams and some other things to be able to invest back into the show and get some better equipment in terms of cameras, get a better computer with some dedicated graphics processing so we could really stream at a higher quality and make sure that it was all mobile so that when things picked back up, we'd be able to throw everything in a backpack and go to the club and be able to present a 2-camera experience at a minimum, if the club was willing, obviously, and be able to stream those performances out. I mean, we were messing around with doing things, streaming EDC performances and club performances on Facebook and all that kind of stuff before the pandemic. And I would honestly never go back to streaming on one of those platforms after being on Twitch. Twitch puts the streamer first. I mean, in every other platform, you are the content, or you're basically like providing the content so that they can monetize it. And on Twitch, you're able to provide your own content and create your own channel, and you're able to monetize it yourself. So I definitely am interested in incorporating whether or not there is real stream fatigue or people hang around after the pandemic dies down. I have no idea. I do know that I have a lot of people that listen to Twitch like the radio when they're in the car now, because, you know, instead of, you know, listening to a SoundCloud link or whatever it is, they're going and they're putting on a Twitch stream because the DJ's live, right? It's just a better experience for them. And I know, you know, not everyone goes out every night. And when I'm hanging at home, on Friday and Saturday nights, increasingly our go-to is, instead of putting on the TV, is to go to someone's Twitch channel and hang out and see who's there. There's usually going to be someone I know in one of these channels chats, and it's fun. And I love music, so it's win-win, right?
Right. I mean, I love Spotify, but you can't chat on Spotify. So I think it's become a new way of like interacting with people that love music just as much as you do.
And it's all live. You know, I mean, it's live as opposed to being pre-recorded. So you get that, whatever je ne sais quoi it is about something being live, you know?
Right. I did want to break a shout out. Morgan.
Yeah, I see him in there.
Yeah. You want to talk about the dog situation over here?
Yeah, he has a dog. Well, this is actually, he had a dog, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to name the dog." He wants to name it something Groove Cruise related, and people were like, "Oh, with his last name Brown, so yeah. Doc Brown." And I've seen the pictures of the dog, and yeah, so I have. There's a little pup out there named after me somewhere, real cute one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, well, if anybody out there watching, I know you guys are tuned in live. Feel free to, if you have a question or something that we've talked about you want to ask, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll try to get to it here soon. So I want to bring up, because I named this UNLEARN, and your label's UNLEARN. So let's talk about your label, and we talked about how, you're about to release some new music in the coming weeks. So talk about developing your label and your sound, and yeah, I've listened obviously, but for those that may not be aware.
Yeah, so the label is something I've wanted to do for a while. It was something that was scheduled to start more towards the beginning of the year, with the first release coming around Winter Music Conference. And then as the world got a little crazy, kind of took my foot off the gas on that a little bit. I sat on it for a minute, continued to talk a little bit about with my management and stuff like that. And then eventually we decided, we got to go forward. These streams are going on. People need music. Spotify streaming was spiking. And it was just sort of like, if not now, when? There's always going to be a good reason not to start it. I had a huge amount of music that I was ready to put out on the label. And so we decided to roll with it. Basically what I found over the past 2 years or so, I think, as things have really started to get serious with me with the production and that kind of stuff, was that a lot of mid-tier labels that I was releasing on didn't really invest a lot in the release. And although the label had the appearance of it being something really cool, like a good get to sign a track to that label, because some of the other artists that they had on the label, or whatever it was that was appealing, what I found was they were basically just factories for signing tracks and putting them out, and they didn't really do a lot. And in this atmosphere, with the amount of overwhelming volume of music that's coming out all the time, that's not enough to get things done. And if you're a label and all you're doing is signing tracks and relying on the artist to promote the track, and you're not doing anything, it's fine. The thing is, with the digital investments, there's no skin off your nose to do that, right? So as long as an artist is going to sign their music over to you, and you can put it out and they promote it, and the track never meets the threshold for payback, and you collect the money, like who cares, right? So, but there are a lot of labels out there that operate like that. And I found over time that I was doing business with more of these labels than I cared to, because when you sign a track to a record label, I always use the analogy. It's like going on a blind date with someone, but then you can't break up with them after you've already gone on the date, right? Like, I mean, you sign the
Good
contract,
analogy.
it's done, right? I mean, you can't do anything about it. So you sign a contract, you find out, oh man, I really wish I wouldn't have signed that track to this label, but it's too late. So I started doing my own investments outside of that. So I said, okay, well, so if I sign a track to a label and then it turns out, surprise, surprise, they're not going to do anything to promote it, it's worth it for me to invest on my end on making sure that there's at least proper DJ promo, or that there's some PR surrounding the release, or whatever it is. People have to know about it, right? I mean, there's too much music coming out that you can just rely on shouting at the internet that you have something out and that people are going to know and pay attention and care. So I was doing it on my own when I was signing music to other labels. And eventually, you start talking it over with some of the people that you're working with, and you say, like, why aren't you just doing this yourself? I mean, the whole reason why you're signing this track over the label is just to get the name recognition of that you're on this label, but then you're doing all the back end investment in the first place. So all the results, the label's getting to get the benefit of, you're investing, you get the benefit of the exposure of what you spent your money on. But in the end, what you're spending on, you're giving half away to a label that's not doing anything for you anyway. So the idea at that point became, when I have demos and tracks, is to really seek out getting them signed to an A-list label, one of the top labels, and if those tracks aren't a fit for any of those labels, and the reason why they're not a fit isn't because they're not necessarily good tracks, it's just, it doesn't fit the brand of the handful of labels that I've determined to be A-list labels that I want to be on, then just put it out myself and do all this stuff myself. And then be able to reap the rewards of that myself. And also be able to take that system, and when you find music that you like from other artists, regardless of whether they're big or small or whatever, you already know that you have a system in place that works. So you can just sort of like plug things into that system. So that somebody knows, if I sign a release with UNLEARN Records, I'm getting top flight DJ servicing, I'm getting PR with the record. I know that I'm getting some of the things, which makes it an attractive home for artists to want to be on as well. So that's sort of like the idea, the concept behind the label, is basically just sort of like, labels need to do something for the music. And,
Right.
And so I kind of want to bring that to the table, where really only the A-list labels are doing that. It's kind of a shame, to be honest with you.
And you have UNLEARN Radio as well, like your like podcast radio.
Yeah,
that you're releasing
been going. Yeah, so that's where that's where the name of the label came from. That's where the name of my brand came from. It came from the radio show. The radio show has been going for quite some time. We're up to 117 or 118 episodes, I think, now. We do it's broadcast on data transmission, and you can catch it on SoundCloud and Mixcloud and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. But that was my monthly vehicle for getting a mix out there and all that kind of stuff, which it still is, but has taken a backseat, honestly, to, I mean, I'm gonna be doing 8 shows a week or 8 shows a month now on Twitch, and it's live, which is pretty cool. So but that's still going out there every month, and that's been the main vehicle for my brand, actually, for the past 8 years or however long.
Awesome. Shout out to they're checking in from Twitch as we talk about Twitch.
Oh yeah. What's up, Audio Feel
So I guess my question is like, where do you see the label like going as you're building this? I know COVID's been a weird year, but
yeah,
this 2020 is interesting, but to say the least.
I mean, for me, I look at the templates of the most successful brands that are out there, and you say, what are these labels doing that make them so successful? Where are the main opportunities to have the largest revenue streams? And if you look at the pinnacle of everything in the dance music world, at least for what I'm doing, is to have a weekly night in Ibiza. I mean, that's kind of like the best you can do.
Yeah.
In terms of your brand, you have a weekly night in Ibiza, you're big. I mean, you're like one of the biggest things in the whole industry. So long term, I mean, that's what you really want to shoot for. I want to have a weekly night in Ibiza. Now, that's a long way off from where I'm at right now, but it involves growing the brand, both in terms of a label putting out music and the attention there, and then also eventually growing into an events brand where you're throwing parties. Obviously, with COVID, things are a little weird with that. In the end, I think COVID may have accelerated my ideas to get out into the live event space more than anything, to be honest. But I also want to do it in a way where it's measured and is at the right time and is safe for everybody and all that kind of stuff. So there's no firm plans to do anything just yet. We'll wait and see what happens with this virus over the next few weeks and months, really. And hopefully we get back to some sense of normalcy by next year. But yeah, I mean, eventually the idea is to expand it into an events brand and grow it from a regional events brand to a national events brand to an international events brand, and to be, one of the most well-respected labels in the biz. I mean, that's the goal, and find the niche where this is the type of music that I make. I mean, I've always felt like a lot of music I make. I mean, the number one thing I get back from demos when I send them to like a huge label, I mean, I increasingly usually get responses now, which is amazing because you typically don't, is I love this song. It's just not right for our label. Right. And that has to do with the specific branding of each individual label. And I want my brand and label to have a very specific niche sound, which I think is reflective of my sound. And I do know that there's artists that are out there that make music that sounds like that. And they go, oh, well, what am I going to do with this? It's a little not techno enough to be techno, but it's a little too dark for some of these other house and tech house labels or whatever. And be able to find that niche and be able to grow that musically. Yeah. Both in terms of a music brand and an events brand. So that's the goal.
Cool. So hopefully the next time I'm down for Miami Music Week, they'll be like, your night.
Yeah.
Hopefully, whenever that is, because I went in 2019 to Winter Music Conference.
Okay.
And Miami Music, and it's one of the best, like, all around.
It's a fun time.
Events. So
it's really. I mean, I would say of all the major music industry events of the year, it's probably the most fun. It's the one where you see everyone from the industry just wilding out a little bit more than the other ones. People, for some reason, Miami brings out the craziness in people. So it's definitely a lot of fun. It's obviously great for networking. Yeah, it's a good time of year. And I'm really disappointed about this past year that it wasn't able to happen. I had some cool things lined up for that. And there's lots of people I only get to see once a year at that time of year. So, shame that it couldn't happen. Hopefully, I don't think that Ultra is going to happen this year, but hopefully we're able to have at least some sort of a conference with some events and stuff. So
hopeful. I hope. I want to give a shout out to Brianne, who's tuning in from Twitch, that sitting in. And then before we go, what I did want to ask you a question about, because we talked about the producer, not DJ side. What about the people that don't necessarily want to produce, but they're great at knowing music and want to DJ? Is that kind of a thing you can do these days, or do you have to do both?
I don't think it's a thing you can do anymore. People like to go, oh, well, look at Carl Cox, or look at whatever. Like, he doesn't really produce an overwhelming volume of music. He's a selector. He's a whatever. He also came up 30 years ago, the way that the industry is set up now, and I'm I'm sorry if this comes as heartbreaking news out there to anybody who wants to be a DJ but doesn't produce, is you're not going to get much further than opening gigs in your local market if you're not willing to produce music. Unfortunately, that's just the way that the industry is. It doesn't necessarily make sense that a good producer would be a good DJ or vice versa. It's just the way that the industry is set up right now. In a way, it's kind of like a how much effort do you want to put into this thing question, because producing music is difficult. It's literally the same skill set as DJing. It's just much more involved, and it takes a lot more time, and it takes a lot more practice, and it takes a lot more making bad music. I mean, nobody just sits down and DJs and all of a sudden has music and you're like, wow, you're a great DJ. You know, you make bad mixes and you choose bad songs. And it's the same way with production. You make bad music and you choose bad samples and you have poor sounding tracks, and eventually you get better and you make better songs. And same thing with DJ. Eventually you learn this trick and you learn that trick and you learn how to react to this situation and whatever, you get better. And I don't want to like say anything, but you know, a lot of times DJs who don't want to produce right now, sometimes it's because I think that they're scared of making bad music, or they've tried and they've made bad music and they just go, oh, the hell with it. I'm not that good at that. But it's like anything. I mean, you're never going to be good at anything if you just do it once. So in order to get good at it, you have to put a lot of time into it. And unfortunately, some people, they just don't put in the time. But the layout of the industry now, you have to produce. I mean, you have to be a producer first and a DJ second. There's people that are getting gigs playing in front of thousands of people who have never even DJ'd before based on the strength of one song. And you can say that's fair or not fair or whatever you want to say about it. It's just the way that it is. And to be honest with you, people are going to be way more likely. Your song that you produce is going to have way more longevity and way more people are going to listen to it to watch you for that one gig anyway. So the optics of it sometimes can be a little bit confusing as well.
I mean, we saw that with Avicii, sadly, his demise, but he was a producer first, but did like 800 gigs in a year or some, according to the documentary that was about his life. So I'm curious about that because I've dabbled myself here and there, and I'm trying to find the balance. Obviously, I had another day job, but it's kind of those things where people are like, well, I either want to just produce or I either want to just DJ. And I've kind of like, I think you have to do both. Like
you kind of have to do both. I would like to see a world because of I believe that producing music is a much more involved skill. It's a craft, like, you know, like being a welder or like whatever. Like you don't just like start welding. I mean, you have to learn how this works, and it's a very involved process. It's a skilled trade, right? And I feel like producing music is a skilled trade, whereas I don't necessarily put DJing in that same category these days with all the advent of technology and all that kind of stuff. So you know, you just gotta put the effort in, I think, you know. But I would like to see a world in which producers are able to be compensated more fairly without having to go out there and DJ if they don't want to. Because there are a lot of very good producers who, for social anxiety reasons or because they just don't like partying or whatever, they're more apt to be in the studio. And that I think is valuable. And I think people should be compensated for that. But yeah. But the whole idea of DJing without being a producer, it's cool. You can do it. I mean, you can be an open format DJ. You can be a local opening DJ. There's ways to do it. I mean, I'm not knocking it or saying that it's not possible or anything like that. But if you want to be an internationally recognized artist, you're just not going to be able to do it just on DJing these days.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today. It's gone by quickly.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Before we go, I did put it up earlier, so I'll put it up now. Everybody should check out his website. Cool, or anywhere. Find him on Twitch.
I'm Doc Brown DJ, basically every social media, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. SoundCloud, I'm just soundcloud.com/Doc Brown, but everywhere else I'm Doc Brown DJ. You can find me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me, and
appreciate you having me.
I will see you in the Twitch chat.
Yeah, Twitch chat. Oh, Twitch chat on Ferris Wheel coming out December 4th.
There you go.
New track of mine. Good plug right there.
Yeah, awesome. Well,